Hey YouTube, my name's Alex Baton. Welcome back. And today I've got a bit of a fun one for you. We'll be developing 35mm black and white film using beer. Cheers. So why would I develop black and white 35mm film using beer? That's a great question. Is it a great developer? Absolutely not. Is it fun? It sure is. And it's a strange way of sort of bringing a new, interesting look to film, using a sort of different substrate, something that's sort of strange and wacky that you would find in a college darkroom or poor students or people that are just looking for something a bit more experimental. So Field Magazine in New York City and Fat Tire Beer Brewing Company put on a competition a few years ago to develop film using beer. And so I entered it. I didn't place, unfortunately, but I did get a high recommendation, and Fat Tire said they would owe me a case of beer, which they never sent me. So Fat Tire, if you're watching this, send me that case of beer. But really brought me back to the fundamentals of photography, which at the time was me just bringing my camera with me everywhere and just making photos of my everyday life. I'm kind of on a never-ending quest, I guess, to find my voice photographically, and I think I'll be working on that until probably the day that I die. But this whole experiment for me was a really nice way of just surrounding myself with people I love, doing things that I love, and shooting film, which I love as well. I used the Field Magazine's instructional on how to do it, so I'm not claiming that this is my own recipe, and I'm not saying that I made any of this up. This is absolutely their recipe. So how do you do this? Well, firstly, you need a beer. You need black and white film. I used Kodak Tri-X 400 and I rated it at box speed, which means 400 ISO. You need a camera. I had a Leica R3A and my 35mm lens. You need a dark bag or something similar. If you're very careful, you can jump under your sheets at night and make sure that no light spills in. You need a developing tank, which your film will go into. You need some beakers or something that can measure some chemicals. You need a developer, which we're using beer for. It isn't actually just the beer that's a developer. We use what's called a soda ash powder and also a vitamin C powder. And these two things mixed with the acidity in your beer will create a working chemical. You need a stop bath, which will stop the developer from continuing to develop. You need a fixer, which will fix the image to your film and stop it from gradually reducing over time. And you need some water for rinsing. And then lastly, you need a scanner or some way of getting your images onto a screen. If you're not going to print them in a darkroom, that is. Okay, so let's go through it here. So step one, you need to load the film into your camera and you need to shoot it. Once you've shot your film, you need to get your film out of the camera, out of the can, and into your developing tank. This is done in a dark bag, or you can jump under your bed covers at night and do it there with the lights off, but make sure your lights are off. It needs to be 100% light safe. Otherwise you're flashing your film and exposing it to light and therefore destroying your negatives. To make 500 mils of beerenol, first you need some beer. Once you've drunk some beer, just to make sure that it's good, pour 500 mils of beer into a beaker. Next, you're going to add 50 grams of soda ash and stir it in completely. Once that's stirred through, you're going to add 15 grams of pure vitamin C powder. This can get a bit clumpy at the bottom, but it's not a problem. Next, you add your developer, and you're going to agitate that once every minute or so for 18 minutes. Once you're done, do not drink this beer. Dump the developer into a container for disposal later, and now we need to stop the film from developing any further by using what's called a stop bath. I use Ilford's Ilfastop and I just agitate constantly for 30 seconds. We don't dump this, we put it back into the bottle, and then we use a fixer like we would normally use in any black and white process, and that just fixes the film, making sure that it's permanently light tight from then on. I use Ilford Rapid Fix and I agitate every minute on the minute for about 4.5 minutes. After that, I rinse my film a lot just to make sure. So after a few rinses with water here, we're done. And we've got an image. Now, most people out there are not going to be printing in the darkroom, unfortunately. It's a dying art. I love the darkroom, but I very rarely get time to go in there. So you're going to need a way of getting your image from your negative, probably onto a screen of some kind. There's a few different ways you can do this. The cheapest way is by using one of these. Everyone has a smartphone, there's a camera on there, and you can take photos up against a window or up against something that is blank and bright in the background and taking a photo and inverting your image that way. You can bring it into Photoshop and invert it, or you can get apps. Cine still has a great one on Instagram. This method is best reserved for social publishing, but I probably wouldn't print anything captured in this method. The most common way of getting negatives onto a screen in some capacity is what's called DSLR or mirrorless scanning. And that is a system where you have a camera, a digital camera, shining down at a light bed of some kind, and putting your negative onto that light source, usually held by a carrier of some sort or something to keep it flat. And using a macro lens, you'll focus your entire image for one negative to fill up the entire screen, take a photo of it, invert it later on in Lightroom or Photoshop or some image processing software, and then trimming it up and getting your negative on screen that way. It is time consuming, but it is one of the cheaper alternatives because most people have a digital camera of some kind. I have a Noritsu lab scanner at home because at one stage I was going to buy a film lab, but that didn't happen, and I ended up with this big scanner, which is incredibly overindulgent, but it's a very, very good scanner, and I'm not sure if I'm going to part with it just yet because I do shoot a lot of film. So I scanned some of my film, and I'm super, super stoked on the results. I did print some work with this beerenol. I printed my favorite shot from the set, and I was super, super surprised with the results. I used my local lab. They have a really nice, big, beautiful Epson printer, and this is kind of bigger than typically you would print 35mm at. And I was shocked that an image of this quality can be printed and have this kind of look to it, and it was developed in beer. So I don't know if you like this image or even if you like prints or anything like that, but I think I'll just give this away to someone. So if someone wants to comment in the comments, give me a reason to give it to you, and I don't know, after a week or two, I'll just choose someone from the comments and I'll mail this print out to you. It is worth noting that beerenol is a way of having fun and experimenting with developing film, but it's definitely not a replacement for a regular developer, and it does have its caveats. It ends up with quite a thin negative, meaning that the color density or the tonal density in the image is quite thin. Really what this means for me though is that it just takes a little bit longer in Photoshop to get the levels exactly where I'd like them, as all the information is actually still there. Where I lived in British Columbia also has a very hard water source, and I think that that was the result of a lot of streaking on my negatives. An easy way to fix this next time would just be to use a photo flow or a wetting agent at the end of my developing process. If I'm just sitting around at my house all day and I'm just watching YouTube and watching other people, I don't go out and take photos. But if I give myself something to do, if I go on a little trip, or if I go camping or hang out with friends, or even going in the pub and taking a camera with me, if I'm doing things, I know that I'm energized to take photos. I do know that there's a big argument where people say, live life in the moment and don't live it through a lens. But to be perfectly honest with you, I really enjoy shooting my life. I think there's something special about capturing it and being able to relive it later on, but also something that I enjoy doing is taking photographs. So I'm in my happy place when I'm taking photographs of whatever's going on around me. And I think that this set of images is a really strong example of that. It's very much an unadulterated version of my own work, and the fact that it was developed in beer is kind of a byproduct of that. But it got me shooting, and it got me thinking about how I can frame my own life and enjoy it with people that I love. I made one of my favorite images that I've ever made in this role as well. And one of the nice byproducts of this is that it's one of the best sellers on my Stilt.com profile, which is a stock website that I contribute photography to. I think it's a good example of my style of photography, which I think is a bit rough and raw and maybe a little unrefined, I would say. But it is my style, and the fact that other people are willing to buy that is kind of a nice validation. All right, well, that was developing using beer. So hopefully you got something out of that. Please let me know in the comments if it was something that was helpful for you. Like I was saying originally, I think that I want to try and make this channel something that can give back to the community, which I've learned so much from. And film photography is one of those communities that I've learned a huge deal on. If I don't know something, I'll jump on Reddit and YouTube, and they're the two biggest resources. And hopefully I'm able to give something back to someone in those worlds as well. So I'm looking forward to talking about more film photography on this channel, which I haven't really delved into yet, and this is the first of few of hopefully many. All in all, I just had a really good time shooting this film. It was a long time ago, so it was nice to dig it up from memory lane and just kind of have a look at the negative. And yeah, I think that it's something that I would recommend that you go and do. Otherwise, just develop some black and white film anyway. It doesn't have to be using beerenol. You can use caffeinol, you can use regular chemicals, but go out there, shoot some photos. Hopefully you got something out of this. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing. It does go a long way to help me and finding the algorithm find you. And yeah, other than that, I think I'm gonna go and finish this beer. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers.